break. I hope you were able to get a quick stretch in and maybe a fresh cup of coffee, because we're going to pick right up where we left off with Module 2 and continue our discussion around the capabilities inside of Dynamics 365 supply chain management. So inside of the manufacturing industry, you're going to hear the term QA, or quality assurance. And quality assurance involves the product testing and basically how you manage non-conforming material. And basically a non-conformance is any type of problem with that product. Now, the quality assurance process can help guarantee a high level of product quality inside of your supply chain. And these processes can also help optimize the supply chain process and basically increase customer satisfaction. And quality management can help you manage the turnaround times when you're dealing with things like non-conforming products. Basically, no matter where those non-conformances come in. And if you do the setup correctly, you can basically link diagnostic results with things like correction tasks. And then the system can schedule tasks automatically to basically help correct those problems and prevent them from happening in the future. And so when you are setting up quality assurance inside of supply chain management in Dynamics 365, you can generate quality orders for various business processes, and this can be things like events or any other type of condition you want to set up. And when you set it up, you can have it cover a specific item, a group of items, or all the items in the process. But I want to move on to is the cost inside of manufacturing, because your company needs to be able to calculate all the costs that go into creating a product. I mean, just think about it. You have things like labor, the materials for the product, any surcharges, and really just the cost of doing business. And inside of Dynamics 365 supply chain management, there are different cost management tools and cost sheets that can help you calculate the total cost of production. You can include things like the material consumption, or you can set up things like cost categories for surcharges or any other indirect cost that you might incur. And this is not a finance class, but I do want to make sure that you understand the two components of cost management. So first, we have what's called standard cost. This is also sometimes referred to as inventory costing. But this is where your company assigns a cost to a product. And these costs include things like incidental fees, like storage, administration, or market fluctuations. And generally accepted accounting principles, or what we call GAAP principles, use standard accounting rules to ensure that the companies that are using this, they're not overstating what their costs really are. But inventory costing is part of an inventory control technique. And proper inventory control within supply chain can help reduce the total inventory costs, and it's going to help you determine how much product a company should carry. Now, all of this information helps your organization decide if the needed margins that you're going to need to assign to each product or each product type. But here's the thing. In accounting, there's a difference in what we call actual cost and the inventory cost. Because if your company is going to consider the value of the inventory as what they paid for it, whereas when we look at the cost of goods, this is what they can actually sell it for. And there's three different ways that you can calculate the actual cost for your inventory. You have what's called first in, first out, or you might hear it called as FIFO. And this is where your company is selling the product that they brought in first. Whereas LIFO, or last in, first out, is where you were selling the inventory you brought in last. And then we have a thing called weighted average, is basically where you average the cost of the inventory and how much you sell over a period of time. So let's actually talk about this as an example. I own a candle shop. And let's say at the beginning of the year, I have 50 candles in stock. And it cost me $500 to make them. Now, if I'm selling them for $15 a piece, and it's all great. But when I go to buy product to make 50 more, it then costs me $600. And you can see, depending on if I sell my older inventory first, the actual costs will be less. Versus the newer inventory, it's going to be more expensive. The actual cost is going to increase. Now, these costing methods do not necessarily represent the actual physical flow of the goods. They're really going to be more cost-based that I'm assigning to my company's inventory. But you know what? We've made it through that mini costing lesson. So why don't we go into more detail about some of that finance and accounting later on in Module 3? But I actually want to switch gears and take a look at the different manufacturing types. So here's the thing. Different products need a different production strategy. And each strategy needs a different workflow. And today we're going to be looking at 3 different types of manufacturing, and we'll actually kind of talk about like one combination type as well. So first, let's talk about discrete manufacturing. And that's pretty much any item that's going to be sold in a store. I want you to think of this as a type of product, and it's distinct. So that one product is a single distinct unit. And, for example, like if we were to say something is non-discrete, I can divide it into different sections. So a non-discrete item would be oil. I can divide it out into different sizes and different amounts. But let's say if I have a teapot, I can't divide that into 2 halves because it's considered a single unit. So discrete manufacturing can be characterized by unit production, where units can be produced with, that are really complex and, maybe you're just doing a small quantity, or you can do things that are really mass produced, but maybe a little bit less complex. So it can be anything from aircrafts to nuts and bolts. I'm going to skip over lean manufacturing though, and we'll come back to it, but I want to come back to process manufacturing, because a lot of people get process and discrete manufacturing mixed up. Process manufacturing, it's going to rely on creating formulas or like recipes to create the product. Whereas discrete manufacturing, we're putting parts together in a way to produce that distinct item. Now, discrete manufacturing creates products that are differentiated by individual units, where process manufacturing does not. Discrete manufacturing produces individual units like smartphones, where the process manufacturing is creating things like salt, oil, or water if you wanted. So it's important that you keep those 2 separate. But let's go ahead and loop back and talk about lean manufacturing. And this is actually lean manufacturing was developed by the Toyota Motor Company, and it was called the Toyota Production System. And the word lean here is used in the sense of thin, basically meaning that you have no waste, or you're taking out the elements in the production process that aren't adding value to the overall finished product. So when we say lean thinking, is we're trying to think of ways to do more and more on less and less. And this can be used in both discrete manufacturing and process manufacturing, since it's really more of a philosophy rather than a product plan. And so that actually brings us to Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, because it can deliver a unified or a mixed mode manufacturing to support all your manufacturing strategies. Each component of information that you have in your production order, you can modify it or you can copy it and basically make the adjustments to meet the requirements of your manufacturing facility. So whether your organization produces items that are made to order or made to stock, or maybe you're engineering to order, Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management can help you with your manufacturing strategies. Now, although each company's manufacturing processes are unique, depending on the nature of production, the environment, all of the core elements that are going to be used in the core production module inside Dynamics are pretty similar to one another. So when you're starting the manufacturing process, you're going to need to create a production order. And this is basically a request to start the manufacturing of a certain quantity of items that are specific to that order itself. And all of the information that is associated with the item that you're going to be producing is inside of that production order. Now, that production order is going to contain either a list of raw materials from the bill of materials, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, or it can have things like a formula that are going to basically have all of the co-products and byproducts. And it's also going to have the resources that are going to be used, maybe any type of routes it'll take, and the operations. So inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Production Control module, it allows your manufacturing facility to change production orders so that way they're streamlined to your specific production requirements. But before we start creating a production order in the system, let's actually discuss a few of those different elements. So the first thing is your resources. This is going to be anything that's used to create, produce, or deliver your goods or services. But this does not include the materials used in the process. So think of this like a machine, a tool, it could be actual people, or a location. Now, when you break down the resources into different types, this can help you manage the utilization and capacity of each. And it can help you make sure that you have the right employees on the jobs. It's going to make sure that you have the right tools available. And actually, for machines and tools, you can actually track the utilization to make sure that the best one is being used for the job, and you can track capacity. So with the resources and resource types, we also have resource capabilities. And this describes what each resource can do. So let's say when you schedule a resource for a job, the requirements of each job and the operations are going to be matched against the capabilities of that available resource. In the production control module of Dynamics 365, there's a task guide that will help you create a resource capability and then assign it to a resource. But earlier, I actually mentioned something called the bill of materials. And this is probably the most important document in your company, or at least when it comes to manufacturing. But before you can produce any product, you need to know all the different components needed to create it. And you need to know how many of each of them you're going to need. The bill of materials is going to have the ingredients, the components, the parts, the raw materials, everything that's required to make a single finished product. So the bill of materials is going to define the materials that are needed. The resource defines where the item is produced, and then the route is going to determine the sequence of events to build that finished products. And then the last thing that we have is the operations. And these are going to be the tasks or the work processes that are being put together with the route to basically produce a specific product. Well, you know what? That was a lot. And I think it might be easier if I just show you how to create a production order. So let's go ahead and log back into the system. All right, so to create our production order, guess where we're going to go? We're going to come up here to our navigation bar. In our modules, in this case, we're going to look for our production control. It makes it nice and easy to find, alphabetical. And we are going to go to our production orders, and we're going to check out all of them. Now, in order to create a new production order, I feel like you know what the routine is at this point, but we're going to come up here to the top, and ooh, we don't have a plus sign this time. It's just a tab that says New Production Order. And now we'll start entering in the information for our production order. Now, for the production order itself, you can see it's automatically generated a number, but now what we need to include is the item number. You can always search for it, but I know the item number that I want D001. And it makes it real easy for me to find it. It's a mid-range speaker. Go ahead, select. And added that item number in. Now, as far as the production goes, what kind of delivery do I want? So I'm going to say from the type, I am going to change my delivery. All right, so I'm going to go scroll down for production, and I am going to change the delivery date. So let's change this, let's actually get it closer to when we want it. So let's say that we are looking to get it for December. Let's just say 2024. We're planning ahead. So let's say that I want it, the 16th of December, 2024. And this is basically telling my team, when do I want this production order to end? So that way everything can be delivered in time. So this is really how we're going to schedule the rest of the process. Now, as far as the quantity goes, let's say that I am ordering 20. All right. And then under our bill of materials and our route, basically this is what's automatically going to populate based off of the route number and the bill of materials for what I've selected. But you can always manually change them if you wanted to. Just know that you're going to have to update those routes. Once that's good, I'm going to select create. And that production order has then been created. But as we wrap up this module, I want to chat a little bit about master planning. This is what allows your company to figure out what you have in raw material and what you need to order to meet your company goals. And the way that master planning works is it looks at what materials you currently have on hand and then compares it to what you need to produce your products. And not only that, it takes all of that into consideration, but it's also looking at your inventory, your transactions, your sales, purchasing, production, and all of the transfer orders, and all of that is going to go into the master plan. So your warehouses, the forecasts, calendars, coverage groups, product tables, all of these different things are going to impact the master plan inside of the supply chain management module. And the master planning is really going to be focused on three main processes. You have your forecast planning, the 1 or 2 master planning strategy, and the item coverage setting. So when you are forecasting in Dynamics, there are 2 different methodologies that you can choose from. We have the supply forecast and the demand forecast. And the supply forecast allows you to plan for items that need to be procured through your sourcing departments to basically supply the materials that you need to operate. The supply forecast is used to help your company drive planned purchase orders within master planning. And this is going to help your procurement team by showing them what they should expect to order, basically based on the variety of the different factors. We look at things like past performance, contracts with vendors, or any type of projected need. The demand forecast, on the other hand, allows you to look at the demand from the customers. Typically, the demand forecast is used by a company to generate a planned production order within master planning. So the demand forecast helps your sales team provide data to the production and inventory teams on basically what the expected demand will be. But the next one that we have inside of master planning is the 1 or 2 master plan strategy. Businesses that take a long time to come up with a plan, this can be for a number of different reasons, but sometimes they may want a static plan. This means that they're running, their planning process every so often. So once a week, they do all of the aggregate and future productions, and they do all of their purchase planning based on that static plan. And because of this, they can be certain in the planning process of what has driven requirements. Now, if you have periodic plans, but the situation constantly changes, you have a second plan, which is what's called the dynamic plan. This plan, what it does, it takes into account the transactional movements, and you can run updates from production on the dynamic plan without impacting that static plan. So elements like the net requirements, all of those are going to be default to the dynamic plan and shows the current situation with the orders and transactions that have processed since you ran that static plan last. And what this does is this gives you insight to see the current situation in the moment. But every time master planning runs, it's examining the settings on the items that you specified in the plan. And not all items need to be included. You could have a different set of items that run each and every time. For instance, one day you might have all the manufactured items that are run, and on the other day you might have all the purchased items that run together. But every item is going to be calculated for the orders, basically to make sure that you have the correct item coverage. And these settings are going to determine basically how that calculation works and how it's applied. And typically, when there are coverage groups, the same coverage groups that you set up can actually be applied to multiple items, helping cut down on that configuration time. Master planning inside of Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, it can be confusing for those who are learning to use it for the first time inside of your business operations. But what I want you to know is the main purpose of master planning is to gauge whether a product is needed to meet your sales forecast demands, and then it's taking that information and it's using that to plan for purchase orders or production orders or transfer orders to help meet those demands. But with master planning wrapped up, we're on to our final lesson of Module 2. And I wanted to wrap up this section by discussing the process of, maintaining physical assets in your organization and that asset lifecycle. Now, your company's assets are vital when it comes to your supply chain, whether it's fixed assets like buildings or machinery, or it could be moving assets like shipping vehicles and containers. Dynamics 365 Asset Manufacturing Module allows your company to have real-time access to your maintenance costs without having to collect that data, but it's allowing you to analyze it and then make decisions based on, up-to-date information. And asset management allows you to efficiently manage and carry out those tasks that are related to things like servicing all the different equipment in your company. Things like, your machines or your equipment that's used for production. And so when it comes to managing your assets, you can choose to track them based off of their physical location. So think of places like warehouses or yards or even buildings. So if you actually look at this example I have up here on your screen, you can see production line 1 as a functional location that's creating the labels for the jars, and it's attaching them using a machine. In this case, that machine is our asset. But if you look at our second functional location, this is where they're making salsa. And in that location, we can have sub-locations called work centers with different assets like things like, conveyor belts or machines to cook the salsa and whatever else is needed. But it doesn't always have to be based off of a location. If you wanted, you could choose to manage your assets by customer. So let's say, for example, you have a customer and they have 2 different offices. And if you actually look at the image that we have here on the screen, each office has their own work center that has printers, printer trays, power supplies, and a number of different assets that go along with it. And it's important to know what assets you have, where they're located, or what customer they belong to. Because depending on your business, you may have to make repairs or perform some type of maintenance. And when that does happen, a great way to keep track of the work that has been done and what needs to be done is what we call work orders. And a work order is what we use inside of Dynamics 365 to collect information about the asset, any work that's been done in the past or work that needs to be done. Really think it's any type of information that's pertinent to that particular asset. So let me actually log into the system and show you how you can create a work order for a machine. Now, it's really important for you to remember that these work orders are what's going to tell your field technicians what they need to do at the job, what asset they're working on, what location do they need to go to. Plus, it also tells your schedulers or your dispatch team who's the right technician to send out, what tools do they need, all of that. So in order to create that work order, what we're going to do is we're going to actually come into our modules. We're We're going to come to Asset Management. We'll select Setup, then come over to Maintenance Requests, and then we're going to look at our different lifecycle states. Now, as far as this is where that In Progress tab, this is where if we wanted to make any type of changes, this is like, let's actually do a little bit of an edit here. So instead of creating a new one, let's actually edit this. And so we could actually change, let's come here to General. So one, do we want to make this an active statement? Yes, we absolutely could. But when it's in progress, do we want to create a work order? So I'm going to allow them to create a work order when you have a maintenance request in the in progress stage. So this will change to yes. I'm going to select Save. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my navigation bar that's saved. Come back to our Asset Management. And then I want to tuck this guy in. So we are in our Asset Management, and we're going to look up our workspaces, and then we're going to do our Maintenance Request Management. Now this is where I could actually create, so you can see all of my maintenance requests that I currently have, but let's go ahead and create a new maintenance report. All right, so the maintenance request number is automatically going to be updated. What type is this? Is this a breakdown? Is it a safety request? Is it corrective? You could also add in your own request types, but this is a corrective request. And then from the description, let's just say that we have noise in the metal detector. Right. And then as far as our functional location goes, I know what the functional location is, so I'm going to go ahead and do pp-02-02. Now, oops, it should be a dash. Now, you could absolutely use that filter if you'd like, but since I know it, it makes it a lot faster to pull it up. And then as far as the asset goes, remember every asset's going to have a number associated with it, that record number. And so in this case, it's the MD201. We can see that this is our metal detector. So we're getting some weird number in it. Now the service level, you're going to have all your different service levels that go along with it. So if you actually expand this out, you can see, is it a critical, an urgent, a high, a low, or medium? And this already has, we're going to say that this is a medium. You know, it's definitely going to impact our work. But now what we have is we have our service level, let's say the fault symptom, you know, what's going on. I'm going to just say it's excessive noise. And then, as far as the fault area, we're going to put it as electrical. All right, so I think we have everything here. I can see who it was started by. I'm going to click OK. But, ooh, look at this. This already has an active maintenance request. So this lets you know before you submit one, has someone else already submitted one. But that was for a light, so I'm going to click OK to go ahead and create that new request. And now that maintenance request has been created. Now, when I go through, you know, if my field technician were to log in, I could actually update the request of that state. So I'm going to update it. And so it's not new. Let's actually change it to an in progress. And now I'm going to click OK. And now what I can do is I can create a new work order. So this is just a request. Now we're actually creating the work order of sending, this is what's going to let our dispatch team know what they need to send out a field tech for. So if we come here, we see all of that information was carried right over. And the inspection job type, let's say, let's drop down. And we're going to do it as an inspection. Okay, so everything else looks good. I'm going to click OK. And now you can see all of our open work orders. And here we go. We have our noise in the metal detector. So now what we want to do is let's actually click in this work order. And if we wanted to adjust it, you can see all of our different things. So if we wanted to add any type of work that we've done to it. And so from the work order menu right here, we can see all of our different general options. So if we have any, we need to purchase anything. But what I want to do is I actually want to schedule this work order. And so I can make sure that I am going to have the right assets into it, what tools, as well as the worker. So we'll come back to our work order tab right here. All right, and here we go. Now we have all of our open work orders, including the one that we just created. Now, depending on how you manage your scheduling or your dispatch, this would then be added to your scheduler's board, and then they can select the appropriate technician who has the electrical background or their certifications to work on this work order. And then it'll let them know what tools, what they need to bring, anything really necessary for this work order. In this case, we created a work order for a corrective issue. However, you could also set up work orders for preventative maintenance, and these can be based off of a set schedule. But there you have it. That actually wraps up Module 2 for supply chain management inside of Dynamics 365. I know we covered a lot of information today, but the good news is that you're going to have the rest of the day to digest it all. But don't you worry, the fun isn't over yet. We still have 4 more modules in the finance and operation apps that we're going to be covering in part 2. But if you want, you can actually go back and review any of the sections from today because remember, you have full access to the learning path at aka.ms/mb920. Again, that's aka.ms/mb920. And this is a great learning path. There's videos and extra documentation and that sandbox environment where you can actually log in and try out these apps for yourself. And there are knowledge check questions at the end of each lesson, which is perfect for those of you who are prepping for the MB920 exam. But that's all I have for you today. However, I will see you back here for part 2 when we cover the rest of the finance and operation apps inside of Dynamics. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.